There we are. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is week 17, and this is day 1 of the week, right? We're going to be starting module 5, lesson 3 today. All right. Before we do that, though, I want to spend a few minutes going over semester exam information. Okay. So I sent an email and I've posted in Canvas basically everything you need to know. Okay. So it gives you the schedule. The schedule this year is a little different. It's over 4 days because we have 8 periods. Last year we only had 6, right? So it was over 3 days. So it's 2 per day. So we have this week and next week, we have 2 full weeks. Then we have semester exams. So this is in technically 3 weeks. Okay. So 2 weeks of school, then semester exams. So Monday, the 11th will be period 1 and 2. So that would be your first period in this class, government. All right. Whichever period you're in. So I'm recording this in second period. Tuesdays, period 3 and 4. Okay. So whatever you have, period 3 and 4. Wednesday will be period 5 and 6. And then Thursday, the 14th will be period 7 and 8. Okay. Now, the teachers are available during, quote, the exam times. Now, this is where it can get confusing. So please make sure you're listening to me. Okay. Each day, your teacher will be available, whichever classes you're assigned that day, your teacher will be available from those times. So exam 1, I'll be available 9 to 10:30, whichever class I have for the first period of that day. Exam 2, that would be the second period of the day. Okay, so Monday would be 2, Tuesday would be 4, Wednesday would be 5, Thursday would be 8, right? From 10:45 to 12:15, that's when your teachers are available if you need them. But you can take the exam anytime during that day. It's open for 24 hours. Okay. So the exam opens at 12 a.m. on the day that it's assigned, and it closes at 11:59 on the same day. All right. So you have 24 hours to complete your exam. It must be done, though, on the day it's assigned. All right. Yeah. So does that make sense? You don't have to take it during the exam times. That's just if you feel the need to talk to your teachers or something like that. That's when we're available that day on the assigned day. Okay. But you can take it anytime during the 24 hours. Now, when we say it closes at 11:59, that means you need to be done with your exam at 11:59. Done with your exam, it needs to be turned in because it will close even if you're halfway through it. Okay. So I have posted for you your review material, and we will go over this next week. Okay. So I have the study guide. I made a study guide for us. Okay. Which I literally just pulled questions and prompts from the test. All right. So I'll put this in the chat for you. Whoops. It's not what I meant to do. See, share, copy. Okay, so I have your study guide right here. And again, this is linked on the review announcement. Okay, and then I have a Kahoots review. Okay, and we're going to do that next week. So you're welcome to do it on your own to also review, and it's questions right off the exam. Okay. And stuff. So next week we will do a whole review. We'll go over questions. We'll do a Kahoots review. I'll give you like more details, but I wanted to give you your schedule. Make sure you don't have major stuff planned the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, or if you do, you have to take those exams. There are no extensions. There are no retakes. There's no, I ran out of time. You have to manage your time. It's expected that you will take them on those days. Okay. And like I said, so this week we're going to do module 5, lesson 3. And then next week, it's just going to be a catch-up week. There will be no new work next week. So this will be the last week that work is assigned. She'll survive. No, she'll survive. Next week, it'll just be catch-up week, and we'll review for your exam. Okay? So we're going to do module 5, lesson 3 this week. And then that'll be your last assignment. Okay? So we're going to be doing the notebook and the quiz. And then I have your review sheet. And like I said, I just gave it to you. It's in the announcement. Next week, we will review in class. We'll do Kahoots in class. I'll go over specifically how many questions, time, all that kind of stuff. And then you'll take it the following week. Yes, Dre, it's your question.
And I just wanted to tell you the reason I was late was, I just want to tell you the reason I was late was because in another class, I was doing the summative assignment that required honor lock. So I had to leave the meet to do it.
Okay, that's fine.
That's why.
You're all good. So we're just going over the semester exam. So this announcement is in Canvas, and the study guide is there. And so basically I've said that this week we're going to do our last assignment, module 5, lesson 3. And then next week will be a catch-up week, and we will review in class. But if you're somebody who needs a little extra review, also remember the exam notes, you are able to use these study guide notes. You're able to use them on your exam. Okay. So any questions on the semester exam? Like I said, we'll specifically review next week, but I just wanted to give you general information. So everybody's good? All right, give me a thumbs up if you understand, you're good. Okay, awesome, awesome. All right, so we're gonna jump over and we're gonna start then our module for the week, all right, which is gonna be module 5, lesson 3. This is gonna be our very last one that we are doing for the week, or for the semester, sorry, for the semester, okay? We're gonna be doing the notebook today, and then when we meet again, and then you'll have the quiz. So these will be the last assignments given to you for this semester, all right? So we're gonna be looking at environmental policy. So the learning intention is to analyze the history of US government's involvement in environmental policy and then their impact, okay? So what's some of the history, what are some of the legislation, and how did we get there? How did the government get more involved in protecting the environment, and what has that looked like? All right, so we're gonna be kind of focusing on that. So really quick in the chat, what environmental issue is important to you? Is it clean air? Is it clean energy? Is it trash? Is it water? Is it temperature change? Like, what is it, preserving a certain park or something like that? Like, what environmental issue is probably most important to you? What do we think? Put it in the chat. It can be anything. What is your most important environmental issue, do you think? I really feel like trash is like so important. Like what we see, especially in a lot of countries, like the trash that's going into the ocean. Some third world countries, you go, you know, so what kind of pollution? Camilla, like, can you be more specific? Like, are you talking about like from factories? Are you talking about like car pollution? Like what kind? Pollution's very broad, right? You know what I mean? So mine is definitely like trash ending up in the ocean. To me, that's like really important. The coral reefs, animals that are being affected by that. It's killing animals and stuff like that. So that's probably one that I am on. Factories. Okay. All right. Awesome. Let's hear from some other people. What environmental issue is most important to you? So I'd say trash is really important to me, and like getting in the ocean. And then I think water concerns. I mean, look at Lake Mead. So I think we'd all be lying if we weren't a little nervous sometimes. Like, is there gonna be enough water for us to stay here? You know? Oh, that's a really good one. Yeah, the shrinking of the icebergs. Yeah, the shrinking of the icebergs. Yeah, so the warming of the oceans and the environment that gives, right? You have lots of penguins and sea lions and polar bears. You have a lot of animals that rely on those. So not only the change of temperature, but then the environment and the animals that rely on that environment and stuff. Yeah, the trash, like we go to Maui every summer with my family, and you just, the idea of like the sea turtles and things getting caught up, or, you know, dolphin things getting caught up in trash. It's just so sad, you know. Deforestation. Yeah, of course that counts. Of course that counts, Dre. Yeah, yes. Yeah, deforestation. If we are going to cut down trees, doing it responsibly, not overdoing it, right? Making sure we're replenishing the forests. It's if we need wood, but doing it in a way that's responsible and we're not, you know, hurting the environment. It's absolutely. I hear you. Yeah, 100%. Anybody else? Okay. So we're going to jump over and we're going to open up our notebook and we're going to get started. Okay, so go ahead and go into Canvas and go ahead and get your notebook open. We're going to be on module 5, lesson 3. We're going to scroll down. Module 5, lesson 3, and we're going to go to the notebook tab. So the overview tab that just gives us the learning intention and the standards. So again, analyzing the history of U.S. involvement in environmental policy and their impact. So how it's adjusted and changed over time. All right, so we're going to go to the next page. And we have the link right here to the notebook. So go ahead and get that open for me. Click on that. And once you have that open, then you need to save it to your Google Drive, okay? And then make it shareable, right? So shareable, anyone with the link, okay? So I'll give you a minute to do that. I'm gonna put my dog outside because she's thrashing around quite a bit. So get this open, save it to your Google Drive, make it shareable, and then we're gonna get started. I'll be right back. Okay, how are we doing? Give me a thumbs up. You have your notebook open, ready to go. So you should have it open, saved to your drive, and shareable, like we've done 100 times. Well, I guess 17 times at this point, week 17. Okay, but we have it down. All right, awesome. So let's get started. Okay, so once we have that open, let's go and let's get our key question. All right, so environmental policy. So the destruction of the environment to meet the demands of American industry is a story that goes way back, right? It's not just now, it's been going on for centuries. During the Industrial Revolution in the late 19th century, so that would be 1800s, the smallest of cities experienced rapid growth in terms of population, environmental changes. So if you think back to US history, right, you probably talked a lot about the Industrial Revolution. And as a result of rapid technology and population growth and stuff, the environmental impacts, pollution, deforestation, polluting of rivers, poor living conditions, polluting of water. And this really continued until the World Wars. And I would say it was probably after World War II that we started to get a much bigger awareness of crap, we've messed up and we've really messed up some things. And if we don't change it now, there's going to be no coming back, So the goal of this is to look at what are those changes and to what extent should the government regulate the environment? So our supporting question is, should the government regulate the environment? Okay, so go ahead and put that in your supporting question, copy and paste it right there. And then we're going to look at our key vocab. All right, so our key vocab is calamity, omnipresent, repercussions, sustainable, and summit. All right, so during the Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of calamity. So that would be disaster. Calamity would be like disaster, destruction, chaos, bad results. So a lot of the reason we have some of the environmental issues we do is overuse and pushing things too far and not kind of taking the reality is we need wood, we need to use water. There's certain resources that we need to use to live, but how can we use them in a way that is responsible, right? Or make sure that we're doing it in a way that isn't ruining that resource instead of preserving and trying to extend that resource. So a lot of times it was not that we were wrong for wanting the resource, but we were irresponsible in our use of it and regulation of it. You know what I mean? And then it gets out of hand and then you have to undo things you've done. As exhaust from omnipresent automobiles added to the production of national booming. So a lot of, with the creation of cars and automobiles, engines, we see a lot of pollution coming from that. And that's something that we're trying to counteract right now, right? We're seeing hybrid vehicles, we're seeing electric vehicles. Electric vehicles also propose some issues. The way that the cobalt is mined, having charging stations, our power grid literally can't handle electric. There's not enough power grid in California. There's not enough power grid to have everyone have electric cars. So we're trying to make changes, but when you make those changes, then sometimes you also have other issues, okay, well, the electrical power use, and what environmental impact does that make? The electric batteries, disposal of them, or the creation of them. So oftentimes the ever-present issue is how do we fix what we're doing with something that's more sustainable? And it's not always simple. And we're seeing some of that happen now, and there's still challenges. Not all solutions are the perfect solution. This wasn't the only negative repercussion of his protest. So repercussions or consequences. So we're going to look at some of the consequences of environmental issues and then what we're trying to do to fix them or to counterbalance them. So repercussion is consequence. Oh, okay. Today, environmental protection focuses on creating and maintaining a healthy, sustainable environment. Again, how can we use the resources that we need, but do it in a way that we are not depleting or destroying that resource, right? How can it be done in a renewable way? So if we're going to cut down trees, what are we doing to replace them? Are we doing it in a way that we're not taking too many? Are we doing it in a way that we're diversifying where we're taking? We're not destroying crucial environmental, So again, there's a lot of things that have to be done, but how can we do it in a way and stuff. Okay. Thunberg traveled to the US by sailboat last month so that she could appear at a summit. Definitely one of the worst for emissions is actually not automobiles, it's jets, right? It's airplanes. So every time, I love it when celebrities, I'm saying this sarcastic, I love it when celebrities get up and preach at us about, we need to be environmentally conscious, and then they get on their private jet. One private jet across the country is equivalent to me driving my car all year. So I love it when people with money criticize the common folk, and they're the guilty parties. You know what I mean? They're doing way more damage than your usual everyday citizen. Doesn't mean that we're not doing damage, but do you see what I mean? The hypocrisy. Sometimes you're like, are you kidding me? So there's a lot of hypocrisy where people love to point fingers, but they aren't necessarily being responsible. You walk cross country. That's a long way to walk. It's a long way to walk, especially Las Vegas isn't a very walk-friendly city. Everything's very spread out, if you got to go somewhere. So give me a thumbs up once you have the vocab done. We're going to move on to number 3. My goal is to get to number 4 today. We'll see. We'll see how we're doing. Give me a thumbs up once you have the vocab done, and we'll move on to number 3. Okay. So we've seen environmental issues going on for a long time, but where we really are going to see more of a larger global perspective, awareness, action, actually like starting to see some change, it's going to be with a very historic book that comes out. It's called The Silent Spring. And The Silent Spring was written by biologist Rachel Carson, and the book placed a spotlight on the long-term impact of the use of pesticides, such as DDT, on American consciousness. So conservationist groups such as Sierra Club have existed since the 19th century. So we've had environmental groups and, awareness brought, but it really wasn't brought to a much larger perspective until Carson's book on the environmental impact. So let's watch a really quick video on this, and then we'll answer the question, okay, and stuff. So she's very historic to the beginning of a more global perspective on environmental issues.
Analyzing the main points of Carson's work, let's take a look at the context. During World War II, the government was spending a significant amount of money on a variety of scientific endeavors to help the war effort. Many of the wartime developments would go on to have commercial success after the war. Synthetic pesticides were one of those developments that also helped usher in the Green Revolution, which is not to be confused with environmentalism. The Green Revolution was the adaptation of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers that helped increase crop yields. One of those pesticides that had a variety of uses was DDT, which was the focus of Rachel Carson's scientific study. From the 1940s to 1960s, DDT was sprayed extensively on crops, natural places, and in neighborhoods, especially the new suburban neighborhoods like Levittowns, that were built on previously undeveloped land. DDT worked on pests like mosquitoes, so it seemed like a miracle chemical at first. However, in the late 1950s, reports surfaced of bird die-offs, and residents of Long Island even sued to have the spraying stopped. The lawsuit went all the way to the Supreme Court, which ruled against the residents. The individuals that were raising alarm bells about the chemical were brushed off by the government officials and some scientists, but the reports kept coming in, including high concentrations of DDT found in produce. For Rachel Carson and her study, she was able to secure a book deal in which she published her findings and warnings about the continued use of the chemical. Now, DDT was not the only environmental hazard of the era. From the 1950s to the 1970s, there was an increasing number of environmental issues, including heavy smog from cars in most major cities, toxic sites left by industry all across the nation, and specific incidents like the Cuyahoga River fire in Cleveland and the near nuclear power plant disaster on 3 Mile Island. All of these had many Americans calling for the government to do something. Okay, now let's take a look at the main points of Silent Spring. The focus of the book is the terrible effects of pesticides. As Carson found, their impact goes far beyond their intended target of insects and other bugs, as the chemical works its way up the food chain and leads to humans. Carson imagines a day when the birds are all dead and no one will hear their songs again. Carson does not just discuss her research and findings. She also takes aim at the chemical industry and accuses them of spreading misinformation. She also criticizes public officials and how naive they are, as the Department of Agriculture does very little in way of regulating the industry. Carson also links DDT to certain kinds of cancer, and one has to wonder if her research with a harmful chemical had a role in the cancer she developed and died from only a few years after Silent Spring was published. Finally, Carson predicts that the targeted bugs will adapt and develop a resistance to the pesticides, and the environment, along with humans, will pay a great toll for its usage. Moving forward to who would agree and disagree with Silent Spring. Predictably, the chemical industry, and specifically DuPont, which had a huge role in DDT, were very upset. They threatened to sue the publisher of the book and spent money on public relations campaign to combat the negative image they were developing, along with hiring lobbyists to thwart any efforts by Congress to regulate their industry. And they countered Carson's claims with their own studies. Many people at the time agreed with Carson and found her book illuminating. It found a wide audience and readership almost immediately, as it became a book of the month and a New York Times bestseller. She was invited to the White House by President Kennedy, who mostly agreed with the book, and Carson testified in Congress. The chemical industry is powerful, though, and were able to hold off serious regulations for a few years. But Silent Spring, along with other previously mentioned environmental issues, spurred a widespread environmentalist movement in the 1960s and 70s. Concrete government action would occur in the early 1970s as Congress and the Nixon administration passed landmark laws, including the Clean Air and Water Acts. In order to enforce those laws, the Environmental Protection Agency was established. This also included a superfund of government money that went to cleaning the most polluted and toxic sites across the nation. For the chemical DDT itself, its usage went under heavy regulations, and there are few uses for it today. However, that did not extinguish pesticides and herbicides, which are highly used in agriculture and is still a hot topic. In the past 3 decades, there have been tremendous growth in organic foods, and the debate on the safety of chemicals in the food industry is ongoing. Well, thanks.
So this book was really groundbreaking as far as kind of launching on a larger scale on the movement, on the Silent Springs book, the movement of, environmental protection and regulation. So Rachel Carson's work had a great impact on clean water, okay? Because a lot of the runoff and stuff from those pesticides and things were contaminating local lakes and ponds and rivers and water sources, and also that towns and things were pulling from. So this book definitely had a large impact in a lot of areas, but probably the largest impact in clean water. All right. So I would know her name, and I would know the name of the book for your quiz, because there definitely will be questions on that. So why is Silent Springs important in the environmental movement? It is important because it not only exposed harmful pesticides, not wanting to highlight for me. It not only highlighted harmful pesticides, but also catalyzed a shift in public consciousness, leading to increased environmental awareness, policies, and emergence of more proactive environmental movements. So that's number 3. So this really kicks off a lot of environmental legislation. So let's take a look at what are some of those environmental legislations. So like I said, Rachel Carson's book, Silent Springs, really launched then, and we see in the 60s and 70s in particular, then a huge movement of laws and bills put out by the government to start curtailing, limiting, and changing the way that industries and manufacturers are using our resources and the emissions putting into the environment. What helped spur this was some catastrophic environmental incidents. So there was the Santa Barbara oil spill, the Love Canal, 3 Mile Island, huge nuclear plant issue and stuff. So these dangers really opened our awareness of like, oh my gosh, like we got to do something, because if these kind of things happen, we're not only putting our environment at risk, we're putting ourselves at risk. Okay. So I'm going to show you a quick video on that, and then we'll answer that question.
The environment is all around us. From the air we breathe, to the water we drink, to the ecosystems that we're a part of. But these natural resources weren't always protected in the United States. Detrimental impacts to the environment greatly increased in the early 1800s, when the Industrial Revolution intensified in the Americas. While the economy soared, environmental well-being began to plummet. This was due to population growth, as well as increases in the standard of living, which depleted natural resources. Factory outputs also increased air and water pollution and strengthened society's dependency on fossil fuels. This continued until 1962, when a single book helped the public understand how environmental impacts affected them personally. It was called Silent Spring, and it was written by a woman named Rachel Carson. In her book, she wrote about synthetic pesticides, especially one called DDT, and their adverse effects on the environment and human health. She is often credited for the start of the country's environmental movement. Within the same decade, legislators came together under Richard Nixon's administration and made a decision: let's protect our planet. The first mainstream environmental law was enacted in 1969, called the National Environmental Policy Act. It required groups to consider environmental impacts whenever they wanted to take on a new project, like building airports, highways, or military bases. The next year, the Environmental Protection Agency was founded. The agency was established to consolidate all of the federal government's environmental responsibilities. This includes researching pollutants, monitoring the environment, tracking environmental baselines, enforcing standards, and more. In the decades that followed, dozens of notable environmental laws were established. 3 of the most well-known were the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act. After half a century, there are now more than 30 environmental laws or executive orders that the EPA administers, including some you may not know about that protect the world around you every day. These laws and orders cover everything, like beach cleanliness, chemical hazard safety, efficient energy production, pesticide residues, noise control, oil pollution, and more. To learn more about the environmental laws in our country,
Okay, so they give you, like, again, there's been so many and stuff. And the goal of this lesson is to kind of give more of an overview of this push. So we see like the National Environmental Policy Act, National Protection Agency, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act. So a lot of these in the 60s and 70s really launching the environmental movement, okay, to do things to help preserve our environment more than we have in the past. 3 Mile Island and Love Canal were both environmental disasters, and they talk about them up here. And again, so in addition to this book, Silent Springs, but also then some of these environmental disasters that happened within the United States, this helped to really push and gain support for cracking down on regulation and trying to be more responsible in the way that we are going about extracting resources from our environment. We need resources from our environment. So we need those things to function and stuff like that, but can we do it in a way that we aren't doing as much impact or do less of it or replace it with something? So it's about, meeting needs, but doing it in a way that's more responsible and not detrimental. Regarding the environment, the U.S. Congress created legislation, regulation, and all the following except. So we definitely see clean air movement. We see a Clean Air Act. We see clean water, endangered species. Soil erosion was not originally something that was addressed. Okay, so those would be your checking for understanding questions. And then let's jump over. We'll do number 4. How did the government respond to concerns addressed in the 1960s, environmental concerns, addressed in the 1960s and 70s? So they created the Environmental Protection Agency, so a government agency that then helps to guide some of the legislation we've seen. Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, Safe Drinking Act, Resource Conservation Act. All of these are meant to protect the environment and help recovery efforts of damages, that have been done over the last century or two. Okay, so you can pull number 4 and put this in your notebook. So looking at the history, the learning intention, the history of how the U.S. government has been involved in environmental policies and their effects. So really started with that Silent Springs and kind of bringing awareness of the use of pesticides and water conditions in the United States, along with some environmental disasters in the 60s that really pushed then the environmental legislation movement in the 1970s, okay, and so on. So today we're kind of looking at more of that history. Tomorrow, we'll look at some of those legislations more specifically, and then some of the long-term effects. What have we been successful in, and what do we need to continue to improve on? We've definitely seen things get better. Are they where they need to be? No, but they certainly aren't as bad as they were in the 60s, 70s. So the goal is, how can we move forward and continue to improve upon and maintain the resources we have and not lose precious resources and species and animals and things at the cost of us using them and living with them. All right. So I'll wrap up a couple minutes early today. All right. So you should have through number, we did 1, the supporting question, we did vocab, we did the Silent Springs, and we did the environmental legislation. We'll pick up on number 5 tomorrow, which is long-term effects, or the next time we meet, I should say. Okay, we'll look at the primary source. Okay, we'll look at the Keystone Pipeline project and stuff, and then we will review a little bit for your assessment. Okay, have a wonderful day. All right, we'll finish up just a couple minutes early. Have a great day. I will see you on this period 2, so I will see you on Thursday. Otherwise, I'll see the rest of you the next day. All right, thank you so much. Make sure you save your notebooks. All right, thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Dusty. Thank you, Cleo. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Sarah. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Alexi.